So there are different type of fossilization process, and because of that, there are different types of fossils. So now we are going to look at the different types of fossils. First of them, the replacement. So what is a fossilization that consists into replacement? So you have the hard tissue of your organism. That can be teeth, that can be bone, can be shell, can be wood. So that's the example you can see there. It can be a tooth, can be bone here, can be shell, it can be wood, and it will be replaced by a new mineral. So again, water is extremely important in the process because the water will bring the new mineral and dissolve the bone or the tooth material or the wood or whatever was in there before. So it dissolves the organic material and replace it with a new mineral. So in the case of bone, the calcium phosphate of the bone, the natural mineral that you find in the bone is the calcium phosphate. It will be replaced by a new mineral, and sometimes it can give you quite nice stuff, like for example this opalized dinosaur bone. So opal is a kind of semi-precious stone, and it's formed because there is an hydrothermalism. So because the water is basically very hot, and it brings a certain type of mineral into your specimen that turns slowly into opal, which is that semi-precious and very nice rainbow-like stone that you can see here. Silicified wood is like the most typical example of replacement fossil because it's in the name. It's the wood that turned into silica, which gives the name silicified wood. It's turned into silica. And most of the bones and teeth that you can find in the fossil record turned into a new type of mineral because of replacement. So sometimes you will find, for example, in Wikipedia, the page I've given you at the bottom of the lesson, they will talk about permineralization and substitution, for example. These are other words. These are subcategories of replacement. But in the end, you end up with a replacement of your fossil, of your organism by the mineral, by a new mineral. The second type of fossils are molds and casts. So molds and casts, it's more or less the same thing. It's just that the mold is the imprint of the fossil in the rock, and the cast is the counterprint of that imprint. So here you have the mold, and here you have the cast. And you have very famous fossils that are molds or casts. So here, for example, you have the tongue child, and the tongue child, what you can see here is the cast of the brain case. So this is not the brain that you see, it's the sediment that filled the brain case. The brain case somehow disappeared, but the infilling of the brain case is preserved and gives you a cast of the brain case. And you can see that this is the inside of that block here, and it's made of calcite, of shiny calcite crystals. So the calcite has completely replaced, has completely filled, sorry, the brain cavity. So that's a very famous cast, the cast of the tongue child, Australopithecus. Most fossils in amber are casts. So here you can see a lizard. Well, actually, there's no lizard left in that piece of amber. So amber is a tree sap, fossilized tree sap. So it's the liquid that flows inside the plant, the tree. And this tree sap can become fossilized. So the amber itself is a replacement fossil, but this lizard, it's actually a mold of the lizard. There's no lizard left in it. It's just the print of the lizard inside the piece of amber. So it's technically a mold. And here you have a seashell that has been filled with emerald. So like the other, the semi-precious stone, this one is a fully precious stone. Water has filled a mold of a seashell and deposited a mineral, emerald in this case, a dissolved mineral, and this slowly filled the mold until becoming that emerald cast of a seashell. So the hard tissue, the difference with the replacement is that the hard tissue has not been replaced. It has disappeared completely, and then it was filled again with sediment to give the cast. So the hard tissue disappears and gives you the mold, and it's filled again with sediment, which gives you the cast. Now the imprints. An imprint is just a very thin film of carbon left in 2D. So imprints are just two-dimensional fossils. They are not three-dimensional fossils as the one that we saw previously, the replacement and the molds and casts. They are three-dimensional fossils. These ones are only two-dimensional fossils. So here you have some leaves that have been preserved as imprint on the rock. But it can also happen to animals like this fossil worm, for example. So it's just a thin film of carbon left on the rock. Trace fossils. So trace fossils can be a lot of things in this particular case. So everything we've seen before that, so the replacement, the molds and casts, and the imprints, they are called body fossils because they fossilize the body of an organism. Trace fossils almost never fossilize the full body. They fossilize the activity of an animal or a plant or whatever. So, for example, you have coprolites. So coprolites, which are fossil feces. So coprolites, this is this is a piece of dinosaur coprolite. So this is a Tyrannosaurus coprolite, the dinosaur shit, basically. So, and it was fossilized, but it's preserved, and there's no bone. There's no bone of the tyrannosaur. There's just bone of what is eaten in that coprolite. Here you have also footprints and trackways that are fossilized trace of activity, so trace fossils. You have burrow casts. So that's a burrow cast from Burgersdorp in South Africa. And you can see, so the burrow was there, and you can see on each side, those little ridges that you see, that's the claws of the animal that dig that burrow. So you can see the claw marks. And this burrow was empty, and then it was filled with sediments. And that's actually the burrow cast that you see. That's not directly the burrow, but the cast of the burrow, the negative picture, if I may say. And in this category, we also have eggs and nests and other type of trace of activity. So everything that trace fossils have in common is that they were not made by dead organisms. Everything that I've shown you so far, those skeletons, silicified wood, teeth, shells, all of these are dead organisms that became fossilized. The trace fossils were made by animals that were alive. The trackways are made by animals that are alive. The burrow casts are made by animals that are alive. Feces are made by alive animals. Eggs, nests are made by alive animals, by living animals. So the living organisms leave a trace behind. And this is a trace of activity. This is a trace fossil by definition. So if it's made by an animal when it was alive, you can be sure that it's a trace fossil. In case you have a doubt, for example, if you wonder that maybe you can think that a burrow cast could be considered a cast because that's in the world. Yeah, but the difference between the burrow cast and this cast is that the burrow cast was made by an animal when it was alive. So it makes it a trace fossil. That's the big difference. And the last category is microfossils. So fossils that are too small to be seen with the naked eye, so you have to use a microscope. So every fossil that is just too small to be seen with the naked eye is considered a microfossil. Usually the fossilization process is quite different because because of the chemistry in small specimens is quite different. Sometimes even you have pollens that are millions of years old, but what you see here, the orange part, is not even fossilized at all. It's still proteins. So sometimes the small specimens have a different type of fossilization process, and that's why they are categorized into microfossils. They have a category on their own because their small size make them different, chemically speaking. So you have pollens, and you have foraminiferans, which are microscopic shells made by single-cell organisms. So those different types of fossils, usually what you will find, what they have in common is that you have hard tissue only that are preserved. But it's not the case, for example, in trace fossils. Usually, it takes about 1 million years to turn organic matter into fossils. But I told you that sometimes pollen grain can be not fossilized after dozens of million years. And it also happens that we can find DNA sometimes in very old dinosaur bones. So I'm telling you that it takes in average 1 million years, but it can take much longer. And a fossil bone might still retain some parts that are not yet fossilized. But in general, it takes 1 million years. And sometimes you have very, very good preservation, and that's why you can preserve soft tissue and DNA. And these type of preservation are called Lagerstätte preservation. So it's a German word, and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing it well. But yeah, this is that word here. Lagerstätte preservation is when you have exceptional preservation of soft tissue and proteins and molecules like DNA, etc. So this is an example of Lagerstätte preservation from South Africa. You have a skull, the backbone, the legs, and you can see that they are covered with skin. And you can see the skin that has been preserved. And this is 250 million years old. So you can see that we are way beyond 1 million years, and still you can see the preserved skin. So this is, so as I was saying, 1 million year is the general average, but not the rule. Time for another quiz.